Well, in a neat little town they call Belfast, apprentice to trade I was bound.
And he's as fanatical and as passionate about it as my dad. Wow. Was, yeah. So.
His grandson.
His grandson, yeah.
How old is he now?
He's 13. He just turned 13. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's great.
So this is your mother and father?
Yeah, it's their wedding in New York in 1964. They got married.
Now, do they meet over here? Or
They met in New York.
They met in New York?
Yeah, they were both at the Jager House. It was at Gaelic Park, an Irish dance hall in New York.
Oh.
They met there.
And what brought your mom over?
My mom was 17 when she came over from Sligo, and she didn't even want to come. Her sister was 19, and her parents were like, would you go with her? She doesn't want to go by herself. And so my mother went with her and loved it, fell in love with New York. I mean, had nightmares about going back to Ireland. She didn't want to go back to Ireland, she's loves New York and still loves New York. But knew, from the day she met my dad, that was the plan. He really wanted to buy his own farm, and he did, and he really did. He overcame a lot of difficulties, but he had such a great personality, and he was such a hard worker that people liked him, and he just got so many jobs in his own construction company by the time he left.
Now, how did the Irish people receive him when he went back? Did they think he was nuts?
Oh, it was really funny. I heard so many stories about that at my dad's wake, because we had a wake in Ireland, which was beautiful. We brought Dad home, and he was home for 2 days, and all the neighbors come in. It's a traditional Irish way, come in and tell stories about him and everything. And of course, they heard that this American bought the land, the farm, because he was, we moved from New York, we moved from America, and then they started to slowly meet him, and they realized he was not American. He was very, very Irish, but they really took to him, because he was such a humble, hardworking man. He had no airs and graces about him, and he was really fair, and he just never talked badly about people. He just said nothing if he didn't like them. But there was one time he went down. There was this Willie Lawler is the local kind of bachelor farmer guy who lives down the road. And so my father needed somebody cut the corn the first year, and so the McLaughlins, the other big farmers, had the combine. So Dad went down and said to Jimmy McLaughlin, cut the corn, and we'll need another couple of lads to help us. And so they asked Willie Lawler, and Willie was saying, he's he's a great guy, but loves his food and everything, and he said to Mrs. McLaughlin, oh geez, I don't know what the story is up here, I may be down here for me lunch, we didn't know what my mother would be like, right? That was his only concern, to see how was he going to get his lunch, And then of course, my mother, being my mother, by 11 o'clock she was down with sausage sandwiches and glasses of tea and scones, and then he's like, I think we're going to get on well here now. That was the friendship for 30 years.
Wow.
So that was the big, that's how he was introduced, I guess, to, and they loved, and then my dad said, I'll tell you what, why don't I go and put a new roof down on your house instead, and let's barter, and then they were that was probably, 2 or 3 times as much as it would be to cut the corn and stuff, but they said that's it was that time when people were neighbors and they did that for each other, and nobody was weighing up, well, who's going to make up the best here? You know what I mean? So he got along great with the neighbors, and he it was only 40 miles from where my grandparents lived, and they were alive, which was great. So we would go up there every week, and my granddad would come down and help them.
But it wasn't easy on you, was it?
No, it wasn't. Actually, I was thinking of my granddad. I was thinking of this story when we moved over. I was 13. Most people know this, from New York, and we had heard our whole lives that we were moving to Ireland, and it was just going to be great. And then my dad brought this big, big loads of land and this gigantic farmhouse that we were going to renovate, which we really didn't know what that meant. So, and my actually dad brought me this back from Ireland, that trip when I was 12, this piece that I'm wearing, which I'm sure I wasn't very excited when I was 12. But now I love it, And But I remember, so we were so psyched about it, even though we were very sad to leave New York. And then when we got to the place, the farm, we, myself and my sister just looked at each other. I mean, we got there and it was this dilapidated, like now, like it's beautiful now, but dilapidated, you know, house. And I know I had lived in it over 100 years old, and I had lived in it for years. And myself and my sister, like two from the Bronx, New York, look at each other. We were like bawling, crying. This is the end of our lives. It was, as we knew it. And that part of it. And my grandfather said, Jesus, I heard of people crying leaving a place, but not coming into a place. that was like the start of it. But then luckily we had cousins. My cousin and we would go to Sligo, and we had a ball, because then we were like, oh, we can go out to discos. And I use the word disco very like loosely, you know, like a little dance hall in the middle of nowhere. But we had so much fun. And I used to cycle everywhere.
So, Sam, you've done so much work to prepare this. So wonderful of you to do this.
Well, what's your mom's name again? Hi, Magdalena. Hi, Josephine. Love you.
Like, probably like, dragging himself out of bed, you know, but I wanted to do it, so, yeah, it's great. But, anyway, he's good. I'll put on some songs that, I'll put on the Black Velvet Band, that was his favorite song. I thought he sang it for me always when I was a kid on his knee, like, long hair, but it wasn't, it's been around for a lot of time, but he used to, everyone thinks of who knows him, thinks of him instantly when they hear this song. So it's a beautiful Irish old folk song, so not a rebel song. So anyway, I'll put the kettle on, and yeah, well, and let's cut the cake.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know some people have to. You're all won't hang around as long as possible, like, but a couple of people now need to go, so we'll get you some cake.
It
was so good to see you.
You had a lot of food, huh?
So much food. Oh, the shepherd's pie.
No room for cake?
No room for cake. Oh, yes.
There's always room for cake. It's a very Irish song, isn't it?
Oh, it's good. I love this. Do you know the song?
It's very happy. Did you ever meet a leprechaun?
I met a gentleman in Ireland on one of the islands who may have been a leprechaun. He was definitely like had a twinkle in his eye.
Yeah.
He was one of those people who probably didn't even have a last name. He just had one name. He was the closest I met to a leprechaun. But I would like to meet a fairy.
You want to meet a fairy?
Oh yeah.
What kind of fairy? There's a lot of fairies around here.
Hopefully not a malevolent fairy. So like maybe a whimsical dancing fairy. flowing robes or something.
Do you want to ask the fairy something, or get something from the fairy?
Just to kind of dance with the fairy.
Many an hour sweet happiness have I spent in that neat little town. A sad misfortune came over me, which caused me to stray from the land, far away from my friends and relatives.
Come all you young rebels, and list while I sing. For the love of one's country is a terrible thing. It banishes fear with the